All right. So there's a study that came out that says that 53% of us have something called nomophobia. And for those of you who don't know what that is, I just learned it myself. It's cell phone addiction. So I think I've got the perfect guest to discuss this with, my friend Christine. Christine, welcome to the show. And are you one of the 53%?
Um, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I got a text on this guy. Sorry, I was
So
looking at my phone.
definitely in the 53%.
Yes, I'll admit I'm definitely
Nomophobia.
have nomophobia. Yeah, I mean, really, like our phones are our calendars. It's my camera, it's
Mhm.
my television, it's my mailbox, it's everything now. I'm gonna bring it back a little bit here, but it's also my JCPenney catalog, right? It's where I
What is
do all my
this
orders.
JC Penny thing you're talking about? Are they still around?
Not the catalogs, but Amazon. Yeah, I do all my shopping.
Well, I think that, as you know, I can be like a history and philosophy junkie, and I was reading by this Marshall McLuhan. I don't know if you've read his book, The Gutenberg Galaxy. It's a good one, but he talks about how before we had the alphabet and writing, our society used to be all about oral. That's how we learned about the world around us. And then as we got writing in the alphabet, and then obviously the internet, and so on and so on, we started to read. We started to experience the world through our eyes more. Our ears got worse. And so technology has this way of changing who we are. So I'm not shocked that over half of us suffer. I don't know if it's a suffering or not from nomophobia. And so I think technology has this way of changing us. So
Yeah.
speaking of change, I think you and I are about the same age. We're from the same generation. We work in tech. We've got that in common.
Yep.
And if you think about how the world has changed, I remember the number one thing I got in trouble for as a kid, I still have scars on my body, was because I never wanted to be home. So, like, I would
Mhm.
be outside and it'll be getting dark, right? And your mom's like, you got to get back in. And I would mentally think, I'm just going to take the beating. I want to stay out. So, you raise kids. I am going to hope that you don't beat them. But how is their upbringing been different from yours?
Oh my God. Yeah. I have two little ones, as you know, Aiden and Sophia, who are almost teenagers at their very ripe age of 6 and 8. But yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you. We would be outside all night long, right? It was the only time, well, I would get beat if I didn't go inside and run home when I heard my dad's whistle. I had to be within earshot. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have an equivalent for the kids now.
Mm.
I mean, I think maybe what they do is they just try to guess my passwords so they can bypass the screen limit on
The
the
screen limit.
iPads.
Yeah, yeah.
But really, I really don't give them technology. So except on road trips, that's when they have their tablets. But yeah, I don't know. I try to limit technology as much as I can. Like Saturday morning cartoon binge is still cool in my house,
Right.
but now it's just Netflix.
That's interesting. So what is the substitute? So and most kids are after school on their devices, what goes on, if you don't mind sharing, in your household with your preteen 6 and 8 year olds? What are they doing?
Oh, well, I get asked every day, when am I going to get an iPhone? When am I going to get an Apple Watch? Mommy, please, just 30 more minutes of Xbox time. So what do we do instead? Yeah, I make my kids go outside. That's how we spend the bulk of our weekends, is getting out in nature. And it's I run like a pretty tight shift, like Monday through Friday. But on the weekends, we do have to touch technology during the week for
Of course.
schoolwork and that type of thing. But on the weekends, it's fair game. We are out in nature as much as possible.
I am learning about you, and folks, you learn about Christine. We'll post her LinkedIn so you can check her out. But what's surprising to me is you are the queen of let's get connected. and digital tools. And then we learned that the drug dealer is not consuming their own supply. Uh,
It's so true. It's so true. I delete the Slack when I go on vacation. That is true.
you know
That
we
is
are
true.
we are recording, right? Don't you run Slack for Slack?
I do, but it's I gotta give myself the mental break. So I delete everything, my work email, all of those things. I'm off my phone when I go on vacation because it's so easy now with technology to get sucked in, right? I think
Yeah.
we've all had moments where you go on Instagram and you start with just like looking at one thing and next thing you know, an hour's gone by. So I don't want to go through that when I'm on vacation. I want to be technology free.
That's smart. So, Christine, if you think about leadership now in corporate America and in the world, you know, we've got millennials, Gen Zs, the boomers, and all the battle going on between the generations. And then you've got this generation, the Gen X's. We are the cool aunts and uncles in the room because we can, we know technology, but we've lived in a world without it. So if I was to ask you, as someone like me who has lived in the pre-internet and pre-social media world, but understand this world and you live there, what did we get right in this evolution, and what have we gotten wrong? I know that's a broad question, but I think it's worth exploring.
Well, first, Amos, before I dive in, can we just take a moment to enjoy the moment that Gen X is having? Because I feel like we're often the most forgotten generation. We kind of
Amen.
sit in the middle, right? So
Yeah.
yes, we have finally made our debut. But in all seriousness, I think what we got right with technology is the democratization of information, right?
Yeah.
If growing up, if you didn't have an encyclopedia set in your house, you were having to find a ride to the library to do your book report, right? And then I remember that you always had to include pictures in your book report, right? So you'd have to go scanning through tons of books and then go make a physical copy of the picture, cut it out, paste it into your book report. If you were fancy, you would get those plastic sheet protectors for your book report. And if you were even fancier, you would use a typewriter to type
Right.
up your book report, right?
Right.
So now, I mean, all the world's information is right at your fingertips, and that is something magical and something that I definitely feel we did right, right? So where have we gone wrong? Well, I think, like sometimes when we think about, oh, this technology is gonna just make this huge impact and it's gonna be so transformative, it can actually make things a little bit more complicated, right? So just a silly example, but I experience it all the time when I'm having to download 17 different apps for each of my kids' school.
Right.
So there's one where you sign up for to bring in a certain dish during different activities throughout the year, right?
Okay.
So there's like a whole app for it now. But back
Right.
in the day, you just sign up on a piece of paper. So there's apps for potlucks. And when I moved to San Francisco, which we're at the center of all of this new technology in the Valley, I learned that there was an app for parking spaces.
Oh,
It was
geez.
just like so
Oh,
intense. And
jeez.
I know, it's like there's an app to pick up your laundry, an app to have your
Oh
diapers
my
delivered.
God.
There was just so much, right? So it's definitely sometimes a bit too much.
I agree. I particularly resonate to that point you made about sometimes the promise of technology of making things better and cheaper and faster doesn't always come true, right? I think when Uber, came in, it was going to be better than taxis. Who needs that? And now we can argue whether that's better or not. Streaming. Oh, that cable thing was awful, and we were going to get this access, and it would be less expensive. And I think people are realizing that technology doesn't always deliver on making things better. I want to pull a little bit on that thread of living in these highly technologically advanced world and living in this, call it less technology. you and I kind of live in both worlds. I often joke like there are parts of it I kind of opt in and opt out of. So for example, digital dating is a nightmare. Like I avoid that like the plague, although it's difficult. How have you straddled both worlds, the digital world and the analog world, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, it's so true, right? We're having to literally every day straddle these two worlds. So we both live and breathe our respective technologies all day,
Yep.
right? But at home, I definitely live a very analog life.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Some people come in and for the first time into my place and they're like, "Oh my God, is that a typewriter?" And "Oh my, is that a rotary phone?" And then I have as my kind of centerpiece in my living room is an old Edison diamond disc player, which was kind of pre-phonograph.
Huh.
And
That
that
is
is like
cool.
yeah, it's like my musical source in the living room. But yeah, I mean, I do other things like I have an actual alarm clock. I don't use my phone. I keep a physical planner for all of my personal commitments. So that's where the doctor's appointments goes, and when my
Huh.
dad is flying in, and all of the soccer games, all of that is on an actual physical book. And then I kind of miss how much we used to use our hands for
Right.
writing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember we all had those writing bumps that you might get on your fingers, right, from holding a pencil. And I don't get those anymore. And I don't think the kids these days will even know what I'm talking about.
No, no, you've just lost half of my audience with that reference. Thank
I
you.
know, yeah. So when you would hold a pencil all day long, it would cause friction. But yeah, so now for me, I do a lot of painting. So that's my way to use my hands. So I paint in my free time.
That is so neat. I write with my hands. I mean, in fact, I wrote a whole book with hand because
Oh,
the words won't come out. Like I could not have written that book without doing it by hands. I am And it's funny you said that about your home. My home is the opposite, right? Like everything is voice assistant. You can turn on every light, you can do all of that. But in these weird ways, I hold on to the past. So, for example, if I'm getting to know someone and we're having a conversation, like at a party or whatever, I don't want you Googling stuff. I want to be, it's okay to be wrong. Like I embrace these imperfections and people are looking at me like, why would we be wrong on something we could know? And I'm like, it's okay, let's argue about that. So I do try to hold on to some of those things. On a personal note, for me, like when it comes to gifts, for whatever reason, I'm aggressively against gift cards, particularly gift
mm-hmm.
cards that someone specifically asked for, right? And it's kind of like I just remember part of my upbringing was getting that shitty sweater from my great aunt that I'm never going to wear. But the memories that from that and like those things, I want to kind of keep one foot in this imperfect world as opposed to throwing technology at trying to solve every little thing.
No, no, I'm with you. It's so funny that back, this is 10 years ago, and when I was living in New York City, you would kind of just walk around and go into a little restaurant that looked kind of interesting or cute. That's how I would try out new restaurants. And I actually once did not go out on a second date with this guy because he just was, before we would actually go into the restaurant, he was seeing their Yelp reviews. And I was like, no, like, I just want to, can we just go? Can we just check it out? If it's bad, fine, but it looks really cute. It's too
Yeah,
much.
yeah, no, I agree. Let's get to know you a little bit. So I'll share and then you'll share like what you spend an unreasonable amount of time doing. So for me, I have a smoker and I would smoke ribs for like 10 hours and eat it all in like 10 minutes. And it's just I just love it. What's something you spend an unreasonable amount of time doing?
Well, let me think. I alluded to it that we spend a lot of time in nature. So this is funny. The origin of this came from I I always loved getting paper copies of National Geographic. I've always had a subscription. I've always loved getting them. So I saw this in a magazine, National Geographic, years ago, and it said that it takes you about 72 hours in nature to kind of decompress from all the technology that you're surrounded
Huh.
with. So
Makes
yeah,
sense.
I know. Yeah, but we don't have 72-hour weekends yet, right? So I try to do that in little doses. So every morning without fail, I take a walk along the beach or in Golden Gate Park. And it's just a way for me to kind of collect my thoughts, kind of clean my palette for the day, prioritize, and just completely remove myself from technology. So that's I spend a lot of time doing that. And I have a giant tub of sea glass that shows that I'm
That,
spending a lot of time out there.
that is cool. Let's do another fun one. So, what is something in your life that you discovered embarrassingly too late in life? So for me is I found out wrestling wasn't real in college. Like it broke my heart. Like what would be yours?
You were a little too quick to talk about these embarrassing moments in your life, Amaz. I don't know if I'm with you on that. Let me think. Let's see. I think this was about maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I found out that Pacific time switches between PDT and PST. So when I would, tell people like, "Oh, I'm available at 10 a.m. PST," I was using it when I should have been using PDT. So I don't know. That's what I got for you.
Okay. Let's get back to this technology dichotomy. Let's now say I made you queen of the whole world and you could redesign work, life, and frankly even dating. What were some things you in your rule you will enact?
I mean, people are already doing all this stuff. I don't. Let me think. Well, you know, I'm all about Slack. So that's already transforming the way that people work. And
Sure.
I think with Slack, I love it so much because it does really allow you to bring your personality inside of technology. So I think that that's probably why I'm so aligned to it and love it so much because
You
I've
know,
never.
you're right, Christine. I've been a Slack fanboy for years. I use it even in my own personal life. But you're right. I think they broke that barrier in a meaningful
Yep.
way of, emojis and all of that used to be seen as, maybe slightly unprofessional. They kind of were the first one to fun up kind of this boring corporate America where everyone is this stiff. And I think they did it in a big way. I never connected those dots, but you're so spot on.
Yeah, I love it. I never have been able to feel like myself more than I have when I'm interacting with my colleagues inside of Slack. So we got Slack transforming work, and then for life, I mean, if you ever read science fiction and read old science fiction, you'll see that a lot of what they speculated has actually happened, right? Not speculated, but envisioned. So I think we know what's coming. There's going to be a lot more change. But I think what's pretty beautiful, and we've talked about it here today, is that each generation will take a little bit about what they loved from for their own younger years or from prior generations and
Right.
incorporate it, into our lives. And I think it kind of keeps it alive, right? So, handwritten cards, or
Right.
there's this newer generation that's adopting flip phones. It could be fashion, it could be the way that we say different things, our little expressions. So there's always going to be a bit of that, and I think what we need to do is just embrace the change, but just really keep on passing on the things that we loved for the next generations. You asked me about Did you ask me
I
about
wanted you
dating?
to, I wanted you to fix dating as well. What would you that's another one. Not I don't
Oh,
have any personal interest. But yeah, sure. Let's
I
hear it.
mean, I miss the ways when we used to meet people out in the wild, right?
Yeah.
But surprise, surprise, there's new technology out there
Ah,
that's trying to, it kind of combines like meeting in the wild, like the olden days, but for our modern society, right? So it's this, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's
mhm.
called Pear,
Okay.
Pear like the fruit. And
Okay.
so subscribers receive this ring that you wear that signifies to other folks that you're single. It's this big social experiment. I think there's like an online dashboard that you use and you get a particular member number, all sorts of technology on the back end. But I that's kind of interesting.
That is cool. That is cool. Christine, this has been a lot of fun. We have a tradition on the show where we leave folks with something you read or made you laugh, as a fun thing we end with. For me, I've been reading this book. It's called Die with Zero. My son's not thrilled that I'm reading this because he skimmed what the book is about. And the whole idea is, he actually argues that we oversave into retirement, that you end up not really living your life because you're trying to save for this and that, and it's kind of like, your game plan should be to plan your life so that you die with $0. So,
Okay. I'm catching out my 401k today.
So my grandchildren will not love that I am reading this book, but it's really changed my perspective. I'm going to live a little in my, not just now, but it gives you a plan on how do you kind of plan your life and not oversave. What about you?
I'm still kind of stuck on that for a minute. I'm like, okay, what should I do with all of my savings? I'm going to check that out. That's a good one. I mean, let's see, something that I can pass on or something that I've learned. Well, if you know anything about women in my age group, Amos, the only thing that I ever watch or listen to involves true crime. It's just a thing.
Oh yeah,
So,
I've heard.
I don't even want to know about any of that, but okay, let me think. Of course, ChatGPT is the thing, and generative AI in general. So, and then of course, my affinity for Slack. So I learned this past week, which I didn't know, that you can give ChatGPT a prompt that says that the response should be formatted as a Slack message. And it is so smart. It knows to include emojis, and it's so cool. Yeah. So if you want to use a prompt, format this like a Slack message, you will see lots of fun formatting come from ChatGPT, and it does a really good job.
That is such a fun one. Well, Christine, it's been amazing having you on. Christine's prolific on social media, mostly LinkedIn. So you can find Christine there unless there's somewhere else you want folks to find you. But this has been an awesome conversation.
Thanks, Amos. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And we'll talk to you next week. You've been listening to an Amos Talks production.